Hello and welcome to One and All. I'm Lakshmi. I'm a postgraduate in economics and I have more than 20 years of experience in teaching economics to both the junior and senior intermediary students by working in a couple of junior colleges in Hyderabad. And I also have a couple of years experience in teaching economics to the CPT students. I've recently started my own YouTube channel, First Track Learning Center for Economics, as I intend to teach economics through online mode also. And it will have a more students can benefit out of this. Okay. So I have already started the junior intermediate classes. And from this class onwards, I'm starting the senior lessons for the senior intermediate students also. So please subscribe to this channel as every topic will be taken chapter wise so that you will not miss any topics and you will be able to understand clearly and in a better way. Okay. So all the best to us. Here I go with the very first unit, the senior intermediary chapter, that is economic growth and economic development. Okay. So let me switch on to the whiteboard. Let me start with the first unit of the senior intermediary syllabus. Okay, so to begin with, the syllabus for the senior intermediate students is covered under the subject matter of macroeconomics. Whatever the junior intermediate syllabus, which you people must have studied, is covered under the microeconomics portion. But now, this is the economic development of India. That is the syllabus prescribed for the senior intermediate students, which comes under the subject matter of macroeconomics. So the first unit in that is the concepts of economic growth and economic development. So concepts of economic growth and development. See, for a long period of time, when I say long period of time, right from the time Mr. Adam Smith published the very first book, Wealth of Nations, in 1776. These two concepts, that is economic growth and economic development, they both were used synonymously. That means what? Economists, all the economists and everyone, they thought that there is no difference between the terms economic growth and economic development. But after the Second World War, when most of the countries attained independence from the colonial rule, and each and every one of those countries wanted to develop their own respective countries economically, it was found out later that some of the countries were able to progress at a faster rate than the other countries. So when the investigation is done, why this is happening, why some of the countries were able to progress at a rapid rate compared to the other countries, then it was understood that there is some problem is affecting the countries which are not being able to develop. So after the Second World War, the focus slowly shifted to the causes for underdevelopment of the countries. Then it was understood that both the economic growth and economic development, they both are not one and the same. So there is a slight difference between growth and development, and because of that difference, some of the countries were able to develop faster compared to the other countries. Those causes were not addressed by some of the countries. That's why they were progressing at a slower rate than the other countries. Then the attempt was made to bring out a distinction between economic growth and economic development, and at the same time to understand the meaning and the concept of what is economic growth and what is economic development. So the first, let us start with the what is the meaning or the concept of economic growth. So when you, the meaning of economic growth is economic growth refers to a sustained increase in countries' output of goods and services, or more precisely, product per capita. This is the meaning of economic growth. So, what is the meaning of this sustain? Sustain means there should be a continuous increase. So, continuous increase in country's output of goods and services without any stoppage. There should be year after year, the output of a country's goods and services should keep on increasing. I mean, normally we mean the national income. So that national income or the national output of a country year after year, it should be continuously increasing. And more precisely, product per capita. How that will increase? Product per capita, that the national income of the country will keep on increasing only if the output per labor keeps on increasing year after year. So that is the meaning of economic growth. So this directly leads to certain features of economic growth. So what are the features of economic growth? Based on this meaning, the features of economic growth are, the first one is there should be a sustained rise in country's output. That is a final indicator. So the output or the national income of the country should be continuously increasing. So that is a sustained rise in country's output. Okay. Then the second one is sustained rise in product per capita. So the output produced per labor or per capital should keep on increasing. So that also should continuously keep on increasing. That is a sustained rise in product per capita. And this will happen only when the per capita income is greater than the rise in population. So because if the population also increases simultaneously, then the per capita income automatically decreases. So the per capita income, the per capita output converted in money terms will become the per capita income. So the per capita income, the rise in per capita income should be more than the rise in population. Or in other words, the rise in national income should be more than the rise in population. Then only the per capita income of the country will keep on increasing. Okay. And then the next one is the increase in labor productivity. So there is the productivity of the labor should also keep on increasing. There is a difference between production and productivity. Production means the total output produced by all the laborers in a country. The productivity means what is the output produced by one laborer. So that productivity of the laborer should also increase. See, if you want to keep on increasing the total output, we should not depend upon increasing the labor force in the country. Of course, that is also a necessity. There should be a reasonable amount of labor force available in a country. But then, in order to increase the production of a country, if the country also tries to increase the labor force of a country, that means the population of the country will keep on increasing. So if the population of the country keeps on increasing, then there is no effect. The per capita income will not increase, the per capita income will start decreasing. So instead of increasing the labor force continuously, instead of increasing the population continuously, with the available labor force, the output produced by the available labor force should keep on increasing. So if that happens, then the productivity of the labor will increase. So in order to have the continuous increase in the labor productivity, in order to have the continuous increase in the per capita income of the country, and also the continuous increase in the total output of goods and services in the country, there are certain factors essential in a country. So that is for the determinants of economic growth. So in order to achieve all this, there are certain factors that determine the economic growth of a country. Now let's see what are all the determinants of economic growth. First one, there should be the rate of savings in an economy. There should be a continuous increase in the sufficient amount of savings in the country. Okay. So if the rate totally on the macro level, the gross domestic savings of a country should keep on increasing. And the next one is the capital output ratio. The capital output ratio in the country should be lesser. Now, what is the meaning of capital output ratio? How do you measure the capital output ratio? It is, the formula is stock of capital divided by total output. See, if the capital output ratio, for example, a country can manufacture 1 unit of output with 1 unit of capital. So this is capital and this is output. Okay. So a country can manufacture 1 unit of output with 1 unit of capital, or a country can manufacture 1 unit of output with 2 units of capital, or a country can manufacture 2 units of output with 1 unit of capital. So in all these cases, the last one, that is 1:2, is the better. This is the capital. So that's the reason capital output ratio should be lesser. That means what? The amount of capital required to produce 1 unit of output should keep on decreasing. Okay. So that is the second determinant. Then the third determinant is rate of growth of labor force. Just now I mentioned to you that the country should not be depending upon the rise in labor force to increase the production. But each and every country, they should have a certain minimum amount of labor force that is called as the optimum level of labor force. Optimum level of population should be there. Optimum level of labor force should also be there. A country should neither have overpopulation nor a country should be underpopulated. A reasonable amount of population should be there, and reasonable amount of labor force should be there in a country for working. So then only the production in the country will keep on increasing. In the first year syllabus, we must have seen that all the factors of production, labor is an active factor of production. The land, capital, they both are the passive. Labor and organizer. Organizer is also one kind of labor only. So labor and organizer, they are the active factors of production. Unless a country is having a certain reasonable amount of labor force, then the available resources in the country will not be utilized. So it should be, the labor force in the country should also be increasing, but it should not increase in such a way that it decreases the per capita income of a country. Okay. And then the next one, the next determinant is rate of growth of technological progress. So only if the country is technologically advancing, then the productivity of the labor force will keep on increasing. Only if the laborer is supplied with modern tools and equipments, then one day the productivity will keep on increasing. So we have seen one of the features of economic development is the increase in labor productivity. The concept of economic growth itself is saying that there should be increase in the productivity of the labor. So unless the labor is provided with sufficient and proper tools and equipments, the productivity of the laborer will not increase. So there should be a constant improvement in the technology of the country. Always there should be advancement in the technology. The technological progress should be continuously happening in the country. So if all these are happening in a particular country, then we can say that automatically there will be increase in the national income of the country. Then we can say that the country is in the process of economic growth. Okay, so some of the definitions given by some of the economists, so you'll be able to understand better. So Michael P. Todero, so he defined economic growth. Any quotation have to be mentioned in inverted commas. Economic growth is a steady process. So process is, it is not happening overnight. It is a process by which the productive capacity of the economy is increased over time to bring about rising levels of national output and income. Okay, so the main thing is this: the national income, the country should be keep on increasing. In order to increase the national income, the productive capacity of the economy should increase. In order to increase the productive capacity of the economy, then continuously there must be technological advancement. In order to have the continuous advancement in technology, there should be such a proper amount of investment in the country. In order to have that proper amount of investment in the country, there should be sufficient amount of savings in the country. In order to have that sufficient amount of savings, the population of the country should be controlled, and at the same time the required amount of labor force should be available in the country. So if this is happening, automatically the country will be continuously increasing its national income or the output of goods and services. So this is, if the country is undergoing this, then that country is in the process of economic growth. Okay, now we'll see what is the meaning of economic development. Then if this is economic growth, then what will be the meaning of economic development? So let's move on to the next concept, the concept of economic development. So economic development is, so this is the meaning. So meaning of economic development: economic development is rise in national income. That is, economic growth should also be there. Rise in national income along with changes in the social, institutional, and technology. So there should be overall changes in the country, from in the social side, the institutional side, the technological side, political side, everywhere there should be overall changes in the economy. Then along with the rise in national income. So this was the problem. This was the underlying difference between the economic growth and economic development. So I told you, some of the countries after the Second World War, it was found that some of the countries were able to develop rapidly compared to the other countries. That the countries which developed rapidly, they have already initiated all these changes. They have initiated whatever the required changes for of social, institutional, technology. So they need not have to bother about all these changes. Their botheration was only what is how the national income of the country is increasing. They have achieved all these, whatever the changes that have to be implemented in the country, technologically, socially, all those changes they have already implemented. So they bothered only about the rise in national income. But the countries which were not having that much progress, they were not able to completely make all these changes. So that's why their progress were deficient compared to the other countries. So what they have to do in order to make all these changes, what are all the changes that will be happening in the country if the country is in the process of economic development? Okay, so that is what is known as the structural changes along in the economic development of a country. So a country which is under the process of economic development, they have to undertake certain structural changes. So the first structural changes in the composition of GDP and changes in occupational structure. So these two, changes in the composition of GDP and changes in the occupational structure, basically every country is depending upon three sectors: primary sector, secondary sector, tertiary sector. In the initial stages of development, then the majority of GDP, see the GDP of the countries contribute, you add all this, you are getting the GDP, okay, or the national income of the country. So whatever the output produced in the primary sector, output produced in the secondary sector, and the output produced in the tertiary sector, if all these output are added, then we are arriving at the GDP or the national income of the country. So in the initial stages of development, the majority of the output will be contributed by the primary sector. The country is the initial stages of economic development. Once the country, this is in the initial stages of development. Once the country is developed, the advanced stages of development, then the contribution by the tertiary sector will be more. So initial stages, primary sector contribution will be more. The developed stages, the second, it moves to the secondary stage, the second stage of development, and then the third stage, the contribution made by the tertiary sector will be more. The percentage wise, the contribution of the tertiary sector will be more, and simultaneously the contribution by the primary sector will keep on decreasing. So the country should initiate that changes, and the same goes to the occupational structure also. The initial stages, more labor force will be employed in the primary sector, and only very less percentage of the labor force will be employed in the secondary sector and in the tertiary sector. So again, that changes have to be made. So more labor force should be employed in the tertiary sector. So the labor force should shift from primary sector to the secondary sector and finally shift to the tertiary sector. So that changes have to be initiated by the country. Okay, that is the uh, first structural changes. Then the next structural changes the country has to initiate is that changes in the composition of industrial output. Composition of industrial output, basically, if you categorize the industrial goods, either it is consumer goods versus capital goods. So initially, in the initial stages of development, this is the initial stages. When I mark it as, it is the initial stages. This is F, this is the final stage. Okay. So initial stages of country's economic development, the total industrial output, the major percentage of the industrial output will be comprising of consumer goods. Only a very minor percentage will be in the form of capital goods. But if the country is in the advanced stage, the composition, the percentage of capital goods will be more compared to the percentage of consumer goods. Or in other words, the out of the total number of industries a country is having, the percentage of capital goods industries will be more compared to the percentage of consumer goods industries in the country. So that is another change. More and more capital goods should be produced in the country. More and more capital goods industries should be established in a country. So that is another change a country has to initiate while in the process of economic development. Then the next stage, structural changes in the structure of foreign trade. So foreign trade, what we are exporting and what we are importing. So in the initial stages, as I mentioned, initial and final. So in the initial stages, the export consists of primary products and raw materials. And what we will be importing will be the import comprises of all the capital goods and finished products. So primary products and raw material, they are not going to fetch that much amount of money income. But on the other hand, we are paying more in the form of finished products and capital goods. So that will be the initial stage of foreign trade. So initially, the country is an initial stage of economic development. They will be exporting primary products and raw materials and importing capital goods and finished goods. And the totally in the final stage of, if the country is initiated the development, if the country is in the stage of economic growth, totally it will reverse. Now this will become the import and this will become the export. So they will start exporting the capital and finished goods, and they will start importing all the primary products and the raw materials. So that is the next structural change a country has to initiate. Then next one is, hold on please. So the next one is the changes in the structure of technology. So changes in the structure of technology, all the advanced and modern technology should be used in all the sectors of the economy, not only in the production, in administration, in management, everywhere the advanced and modern technology should be used by the country. Slowly they should shift from the outdated technology to using all the recent or the advanced technology in all the sectors of the economy. And lastly, changes in the social, institutional, and organizational structure. So this is, in other words, this is the, all these are economic changes, and this one is the non-economic change the country has to initiate. So social, institutional, and structural organization means people should shift from all the outdated beliefs, customs, superstitious beliefs. All those things should not be there. The country, the people should have the modern attitudes. For example, controlling of population, controlling the birth rate. People should start believing in modern attitudes. People should start participating in the economic development of a country. So the attitude of the people should change along with all the other changes. So once that changes, and automatically all the economic changes will also take place, and slowly the country will finish the process of economic development and reach the stage of economic growth. Or in other words, economic growth is the final stage. Economic development is the initial stage. Once the country finished all these changes, then it need not have to bother about everything. The country just have to look into one day the rise in national income. They need not have to bother about whether the foreign trade structure is changing, whether the attitude of the people is changing, whether the primary sector is contributing more or tertiary sector is contributing more. nothing they have to worry about it. So it is just like they say, no, unidimensional. They need not have to bother about anything, but only the rise in the national income of a country. So when the country reaches that stage, that becomes the final stage. That is what is economic growth. So the initial stages of development is economic development, and the final stages of development is economic growth. So there is one definition given by Madison. So he has very clearly mentioned that the rise in, let me start with the highlighted, the raising of income levels is generally called economic growth in rich countries and in poor ones. It is called economic development. So along with economic development, national income also increases. But what is the problem? We cannot depend upon it. This year it might increase, next year it might not increase. The national income of the country might not increase unless all those changes, institutional, technological, organizational, social changes, of all those changes are implemented by the country, all those changes are completed by the country, then there will not be sustained rise in the national income. There will not be any continuous rise in the national income. Only after all those changes are implemented by the country properly, then the national income will increase sustainably. Okay, so that was the problem. They found out that some of the countries, they were able to, after the Second World War, some of the countries, they were able to rise their national income because they initiated all those changes, but the other countries, they were not able to do so. Okay, so this is the difference between economic growth and economic development, or the meaning or the concept of growth and development. Hope this concept is clear to you. So if you have any doubts, please mention in the comment box. And as I mentioned, please subscribe to this channel. And if you find this video useful, please like and share it with your friends. So until my next video, take care. Bye-bye.